Why men over 60 stop explaining themselves to women? There comes a point in a man's life when he stops explaining himself. Not because he is arrogant, not because he is emotionally unavailable, not because he has lost the ability to communicate, but because after 60, a man finally understands something that younger men are too anxious, too desperate, and too approval-hungry to understand. Not everyone deserves access to his inner world. Society looks at an older man who no longer defends every decision, no longer justifies every boundary, and no longer argues when a woman misunderstands him, and it instantly labels him as difficult. They say he has become cold. They say he is stubborn. They say he is bitter from the past. They say he does not know how to love anymore. But society is wrong. What you are witnessing is not emotional failure. It is emotional maturity. It is a man who has spent 40 or 50 years explaining himself to bosses, wives, children, relatives, friends, courts, banks, employers, and society itself. He has explained why he worked late. He has explained why he was tired. He has explained why he needed silence. He has explained why he could not keep giving. He has explained why his money had limits. He has explained why his heart was exhausted. And after decades of being cross-examined by life, he finally reaches a sacred conclusion. My peace does not require a courtroom. Today, we are going to look under the surface. We are going to uncover why men over 60 stop explaining themselves to women, why this silence is so often misunderstood, and why, in many cases, it is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-respect. Reason number 1. He has learned that some people are committed to misunderstanding him. When a man is young, he believes that if he just finds the right words, everything can be fixed. If she is upset, he explains. If she accuses him, he explains. If she doubts his intentions, he explains. If she twists his silence into rejection, he explains again. The young man thinks communication is always the answer, and in healthy relationships, communication is necessary. But the senior man has learned a darker truth. There are some people who are not listening to understand. They are listening to win. They are not asking questions because they want clarity. They are asking questions because they want control. They do not want the truth. They want a confession. A man over 60 has seen this pattern too many times to be fooled by it anymore. He knows the difference between a woman who is confused and a woman who is interrogating him. He knows the difference between a genuine concern and a disguised accusation. He knows the difference between a conversation and a trap. And once he recognizes that the other person has already written the story in her mind, he stops wasting his breath trying to edit it. This is where the older man becomes dangerous to manipulation. He no longer feels the need to prove that he is a good man to someone who benefits from treating him like a guilty one. He simply watches. He listens. And if the pattern reveals itself, he withdraws. No shouting, no begging, no long emotional speeches, just silence. Because he understands that a man cannot talk his way into being respected by someone who is addicted to disrespecting him. Reason number 2. He is exhausted from a lifetime of emotional labor. People often talk about women carrying emotional labor in relationships, and in many cases, that is true. But very few people talk about the emotional labor carried by men who are expected to absorb pressure without complaint. The man is expected to be calm when everyone else is falling apart. He is expected to provide when he is afraid. He is expected to protect when he himself feels unprotected. He is expected to listen, solve, pay, forgive, adjust, compromise, and remain steady. And if he finally says, "I am tired," he is often treated as weak. So he learns to explain his exhaustion in a way that does not offend anyone. He softens his language. He hides his frustration. He takes responsibility for emotions that do not belong to him. He apologizes just to end the argument. For decades, he becomes the emotional shock absorber in the room. But after 60, something changes. His nervous system is no longer willing to pay the tax. The body becomes honest. The mind becomes less tolerant of chaos. The spirit refuses to perform. And the man realizes that constantly explaining himself has become another form of labor, a labor that drains him, a labor that rarely rewards him, a labor that keeps him trapped in conversations where his peace is always on trial. So he stops. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he has already said enough in this lifetime. Reason number 3. He has learned that over-explaining lowers his dignity. There is a quiet humiliation in repeatedly defending your own character. A man can explain once with calmness, He can clarify once with respect. He can correct a misunderstanding once with patience. But when he has to keep explaining the same boundary, the same intention, the same decision over and over again, something inside him begins to collapse. He realizes he is no longer communicating. He is auditioning for approval. And after 60, a man with wisdom refuses to audition. This is one of the biggest psychological shifts in older men. They stop negotiating their dignity. A younger man may write paragraphs. He may send long messages. He may stay awake all night trying to convince a woman that he did not mean harm. He may beg her to see his heart. But the senior man has lived long enough to know that begging to be understood often makes a man look smaller in the eyes of the person already disrespecting him. So his response becomes simple. I have explained myself once. That is enough. If she still chooses to twist his words, that is her decision. If she still chooses to assume the worst, that is her character. If she still chooses drama over clarity, that is her pattern. He will not crawl on the floor of someone else's perception just to be seen as decent. A man who has survived 6 decades of life knows that his dignity is not a public debate. It is private property, and he guards it. Reason number 4, he no longer confuses love with constant access. Many men were trained to believe that if they love a woman, they must give her unlimited emotional access, unlimited explanations, unlimited reassurance, unlimited patience, unlimited tolerance. If she demands to know every thought in his head, he must answer. If she questions every decision, he must justify it. If she feels insecure, he must open every locked door in his mind. But the older man understands something profound. Love does not require the destruction of personal boundaries. A woman can be loved without being allowed to interrogate every silence. A woman can be valued without being given control over every decision. A woman can be respected without being granted ownership of a man's inner world. After 60, a man begins to treat his peace like sacred ground. He does not let every fear walk across it. He does not let every accusation enter it. He does not let every emotional storm rearrange the furniture of his soul. He has learned that some people call it communication when what they really want is surveillance. They do not want intimacy. They want access. They want to know everything. Not because they trust him more, but because they trust themselves less. And the senior man refuses to become a prisoner inside someone else's insecurity. He can be kind, he can be loving, he can be present, but he will not live under emotional inspection, not anymore. Reason number 5, he has seen his vulnerability weaponized. This is the one that changes a man forever. Many men over 60 did open up once. They told a woman their fears. They admitted their wounds. They confessed their financial anxiety, their loneliness, their shame, their failures, their regrets. They believed the relationship was a safe place, and for a while it may have been. But then came the argument, and suddenly, the very things he shared in trust were thrown back at him with surgical precision. His weakness became ammunition. His confession became a weapon. His pain became a courtroom exhibit. This does something to a man. It teaches him that not every person who asks him to open up has the maturity to hold what comes out. So later in life, when a woman demands that he explain what he feels, what he thinks, why he is quiet, why he is distant, why he needs space, he becomes careful, very careful. He is not afraid of intimacy. He is protecting the sacred parts of himself from careless hands. A younger man may believe that openness automatically creates closeness. The senior man knows better. Openness with the wrong person creates exposure, and exposure without trust is danger. So he becomes selective. He speaks when there is safety. He explains when there is respect. He opens up when there is evidence of emotional responsibility. But if he senses mockery, manipulation, or future punishment, the gates close immediately, and they may never open again. Reason number 6, he understands that silence is sometimes the highest form of self-control. A man who has not mastered himself needs the last word. He needs to correct every accusation. He needs to defend every slight. He needs to prove that he is right. But a man over 60 who has done the inner work has discovered the power of restraint. He can hear a false accusation and not chase it. He can watch someone misread him and not collapse. He can let a woman believe what she wants to believe without sacrificing his nervous system to change her mind. This is not weakness. This is command. The old man who stays silent is often not defeated. He is choosing not to enter a battlefield that has no prize. He has fought enough wars. He has stood in enough kitchens at midnight trying to explain his tone. He has sat through enough circular arguments that begin nowhere and end nowhere. He has lost enough sleep trying to prove his love to someone determined to measure it incorrectly. Now he knows better. Not every battle deserves a sword. Not every accusation deserves his defense. Not every emotional fire deserves his water. Sometimes the most powerful sentence a man can speak is no sentence at all. He simply lets the noise pass. And in that silence, he keeps ownership of himself. Reason number 7. He knows his remaining time is too valuable. This is the deepest reason. After 60, time changes shape. When a man is 30, he can waste 3 years in a chaotic relationship and still believe he has forever ahead of him. When he is 40, he can recover from a bad chapter and rebuild. But after 60, every year has weight. Every morning matters. Every peaceful evening has value. Every quiet meal, every walk, every conversation, every hour of sleep becomes part of a limited and precious treasury. The senior man becomes brutally aware of this. He knows he does not have endless decades left to explain himself to people who drain him. He does not have the luxury of arguing for 5 hours about something that should have required 5 minutes of mutual respect. He does not have time to convince a woman that his boundaries are not attacks. He does not have time to teach emotional maturity to someone who has no interest in learning it. His remaining life is not a classroom for other people's insecurity. It is his sanctuary, and he will protect it. This is why older men often walk away with such calm finality. To outsiders, it looks sudden, but it is rarely sudden. He has watched the pattern. He has measured the cost. He has felt the energy leaving his body. He has heard the same accusation one too many times. And one day, something inside him simply says, enough. No explosion, no dramatic farewell, no desperate attempt to be understood, just enough. That is the moment a senior man reclaims his throne. Now listen carefully. This does not mean a man over 60 should become cruel. It does not mean he should refuse healthy communication. It does not mean every woman is wrong or every concern is manipulation. A wise man can still apologize. He can still listen. He can still explain when love, respect, and good faith are present. But he no longer explains himself to people who use his explanations as ropes to tie him down. He no longer pours sacred energy into conversations designed to exhaust him. He no longer treats misunderstanding as an emergency. He has learned that the right woman does not need to interrogate his soul to trust his character. She studies his consistency. She watches his actions. She respects his boundaries. She does not demand that he bleed emotionally just to prove that he cares. And this is the truth most people do not understand. When a man over 60 stops explaining himself, he is not closing his heart. He is raising his standards for who gets to hear it. He is no longer handing out pieces of his inner world to anyone who knocks loudly enough. He is no longer allowing confusion, guilt, or pressure to drag him into emotional court. He has built a kingdom from discipline, scars, sacrifice, and silence. And at this stage of life, the gates are not open to everyone. So if you are a man who has reached this point, do not let anyone shame you for your restraint. Do not let society call you bitter because you have become selective. Do not let a woman call you cold because you refuse to over-explain what your actions have already proven. You are not obligated to defend your peace to people who benefit from disturbing it. You are not obligated to translate your soul for people who prefer distortion. You are not obligated to keep speaking when silence protects your dignity. You have explained enough. You have carried enough. You have performed enough. Now the remaining years belong to you. Spend them with people who understand your quiet. Spend them with people who do not turn your boundaries into crimes. Spend them with people who bring peace into the room, not pressure. Because after 60, a man finally learns the sacred art of conserving his words. He speaks where there is respect. He explains where there is love. He opens where there is safety. And everywhere else, he remains silent. Not because he is empty, but because he is finally full of himself. If this message resonated with your life, share your experience in the comments below. What was the moment you realized you no longer needed to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you? If this video brought you clarity, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with a brother who needs to hear this truth. Welcome to the elite circle of those who understand. Until next time, protect your peace.